everybody, welcome to 2MB Studios presents The Joy of Posting, hosted by me, Rachel Jane Andelman. And welcome to your Wednesday night, your Thanksgiving Eve, the day before the day where you either grossly transformed your plans or you decided, hey, what if we were risky business. But thank you if you had a flight that you canceled. Thank you if there was a gathering of 20 you decided to make 3 or even 1. Many people that you never will meet or know about. Thank you. My name is Rachel, and I love to write on the internet. I love to write jokes for people whose faces I don't see. I've been on Twitter and active on that platform for about 12 years. I'm quite old, like the witch from Game of Thrones, and I love writing jokes. I have been employed in various circumstances, either directly as a joke writer or sort of in tertiary in adjacent positions. And one day, who knows, maybe I'll write jokes for a living, as opposed to briefly on the side. Hello, Kat. Kat is Loaf the Wonder Bread is the name of Kat. Kat's a wonderful person who is someone you can see on different shows on this channel. For example, The Great Baking Show, which I believe is every third Sunday, as well as Sleepover, which is every other Saturday. I believe they have a show this Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Cool. Let me see how our viewers are doing. Sometimes I like to vamp a little bit at the top of the show just for people sneaking in. I still think in terms of a physical theater, even though our physical theater, that is the theater to which our community of comedians has been historically attached, did lose its physical space. Yes, Kat, I'm very good at plugging shows. It's what I do now. I'm a social media director of a Twitch channel. But we recently lost our space, and it's very sad. So that makes, in our minds, the virtual space that we have right now even more important. And it's our hope to continue to nurture the space and to provide people's artistic, creative visions as much as we can, knowing that that physical space is now definitely gone, as opposed to probably gone or gone-ish, which was the case for a while. We have about 9 people, which is great for a holiday. Somebody texted me earlier asking, do you have shows today? What's your deal? And I'm like, well, we're not going anywhere because we're responsible and we value human life. So we're here. So we're doing our shows. So whether you're watching, we're doing them is sort of our philosophy. Hello, Kit. Too soon, sob, wob, or sobs, wob. that's halfway between a sob and a wap. My feeling is I get angry when I think about the theater too much, but I am trying my best to maintain an air of serenity, an air of enlightened aloofness, if you will, if only to get through these few months. Guys, the vaccine's on the horizon, and with it, our new future, whatever that ends up looking like. So the first thing that I do, and usually I do this before y'all show up, but today I didn't necessarily prep, by which I mean opening the 2 tabs which I need for this show to function, which is the Twitter tab and the Google Documents tab. So I'm just going to open those up real quick for you now. For me, what's so funny about this show, I feel, compared to other shows on this channel is if you watch, Kenny Makes Music, he is producing an entire song in 2 hours at 4 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday. And these are real ass songs. He'll say stuff about like chain linking and arpeggios and Ableton, and it's like a Mad Hatter scientist sort of conglomeration. It's all very technical and magical to me. And when I do my show, I'm like, oh, I need to get a document open so I can write my yucks. It's much feels much more in the realm of the rudimentary. So if that's fun, if that's a fun aspect for the show for you, then I'm glad you enjoy it. Because the rudimentary is sort of my ball and chain, my or whatever you call it. It's my curse, it's my blessing. I love the basics. There's some sort of conversation going on between Loaf and Kit. Hello. Oh, I still need my new monitor. That actually reminds me that my friend Josh said he'd give me a new monitor for the duration of the pandemic, so I should talk to him. Ready and Ready said, so Kenny makes one thing in an hour, whereas you make like 30 things in an hour, which means you're clearly claiming you're 3 times better than Kenny. Bold. Yes, that's clearly that was the gist. Thank you. So thank you, Red, the Ready, for so capably capturing my meaning, which is to say that I'm much better than Kenny. That's what I meant. And that's what I'm saying again, having read your comment. So today we're going to write some tweets, and we're going to write them for the purposes of performing in front of an audience. I am going to write them in a Google Doc so you can see more explicitly my thought process. Generally, when I'm writing tweets on my phone in private, or whatever private means in the virtual space, I generally do not have a Google Doc open, but a Google Doc is a great canvas on which to sort of lay out my ideas and lay out more visually my thinking before the thoughts are completely synthesized, to the extent that I can synthesize what I think into the versions of the tweets, which you'll see when I post them. That is one handsome Minotaur. I believe Matt is making some sort of veiled reference to the fact that Ready and Ready is a person who is often either playing a Minotaur, for example, in an improv show, or is manifests as a Minotaur, for example, in a show poster, for example. Again, these are very Boston comedy-specific references, and I don't feel that by explaining them I've necessarily enlightened you onto their graver meaning, but I thought I would try. So for this week, I thought we would get started writing some jokes, probably about the season. I always think that one benefit of the holidays and basically any sort of seasonal event is that people are seeking out any sort of content or any sort of experience which aligns with that event or that celebration. So topical jokes in the vein of making fun of or teasing us about the experience of Thanksgiving, I think are all particularly appreciated during this week. So we're going to probably write some Thanksgiving jokes. I can't make a turkey, but I can write some jokes about turkeys. Oh boy, we just got a bunch of bots in the chat. Hello, you guys. I hope you are oiling your limbs appropriately. I know from watching film that if you don't oil your limbs, you may get stuck in a field and have to wait for a Kansas young woman to save you. But obviously, one would assume you're not that kind of bot. Also, Frank Oz would probably... I was about to make a Wizard of Oz joke, but I just realized that I was about to say the author of Wizard of Oz was Frank Oz, which now that I say it, that's not true. I think it's Frank Ilbaum. Would say that, but my meaning was, what I was trying to get toward was the idea that Tin Man is probably not technically a robot. I love this idea that Frank Oz wrote The Wizard of Oz. That's ludicrous. That's like so stupid that you feel embarrassed that you ever had that thought, even in a passing manner, much less in a way that escaped your mouth. But anyways, Thanksgiving jokes are on the table, so to speak. Thanksgiving table. Thanksgiving jokes are on the table. Thank you again for all watching my stream. I know it is again a holiday weeknight. It's a holiday and a weeknight, which can't possibly lend itself well to watching Twitch streams. But I'm glad for those of you who are here, I am glad that you are, because we're about to write some fun jokes. First, let me get a glass of water. I remembered my water. I don't always remember my water. Stream, you're a whole river. Thank you, Kit. I'm not sure what being called a river is, but I will take it. So Thanksgiving jokes. It's obviously the night before Thanksgiving, so people are thinking about Thanksgiving. Things about Thanksgiving. Well, first, to write jokes about Thanksgiving, and this is always the part of the show, to be honest, it gives me a heart attack, because this is the part of the show where I have to actually begin crafting some jokes, at which point I always say, Rachel, what if this week is the week where you can't write a joke? At which point I have to remind myself that somehow every week I manage. So letting that wave of panic pass through you like a ghost that's in a hurry. And then you continue the best way you know how, which is to write words or concepts you associate with Thanksgiving. So, for example, turkeys, you often associate Thanksgiving with turkeys. Turkeys live in the middle of the table, by which I mean their corpses live in the center of the table, and they are the star of Thanksgiving. It's always funny that a corpse would become the protagonist of a holiday. Thanksgiving is a holiday whose protagonist is a corpse. This is in contrast with Christmas. I think I'm gonna make this a little less big because I don't like the fact that I'm going back and forth like a I feel like I'm going back and forth like a typewriter. Yes, Matt, I am getting to Easter. One thing you'll notice about my jokes is I'll often take for granted certain leaps of logic or certain statements, which I believe to simply be true because they're the statements which occur to me to be true. They're not necessarily how other people would approach the subject. But for me, I just have to sort of embrace my own flawed, loopy logic. I think that's where a lot of my humor lies. So you may notice I'll say something or assume something that you may not ever you would not necessarily perceive yourself to be in conditions like mine where you would make the same assumption or the same leap, in which case feel free to note that in yourself and enjoy and consider blessed your own strange flawed logic, because that's where a lot of joke writing I think emerges. So Matt, no need to worry or apologize. Thanksgiving is a holiday whose protagonist is a corpse, is in contrast with Christmas, who's I wonder if I can make this stop doing that thing where it goes back and forth, but I don't want to make it too small. Maybe I'll just blow up the font. There it is. You want to get the big font so you can see it on your phone. I assume everyone is watching this on their phone because that's how I watch things without going back and forth, because I hate that. Thanksgiving is a holiday whose protagonist is a corpse, is in contrast with Christmas, whose protagonist is an immortal grandfather. And Easter, whose main character. For me, it's much funnier. Easter is a much funnier holiday when you assume it's purely about bunnies and chicks. So Easter, whose main character is the most thickened mammal. I believe thickened is the word I want. Checking. Fruitful, yes. I want to say that bunnies give birth a lot. Not because they're sluts, but because they like gestate, or they conceive upon penetration or something wild like that. They just are incredibly fertile. Thanksgiving is a holiday whose protagonist is a corpse. It's contrasts Christmas, whose protagonist is a mortal grandpa. And Easter, grandpa is, now that I'm saying it, a funnier word than grandfather. And Easter, whose main character is the most fecund mammal. Rabbit, most fecund mammal God has devised. Serp writes, I feel like many funny people on Twitter would make that a single sentence joke, an observation about a corpse protagonist unexplained. What does the second sentence explaining your logic add from a comedy theory perspective? Is it to let the audience read the joke in your specific voice, or is the comedy thrust in that explanation? So basically, I think one thing that separates people who are on Twitter casually with people who are on Twitter in a intense life transforming way is this sort of recognition that Twitter jokes need, by the nature of the platform, to be a bit more complicated or involved than one might suspect. Basically, for me, Thanksgiving is a holiday for a corpse is not a joke. It's a non sequitur, a statement. It's only by exploring it that it becomes worthwhile and valuable as an experience as perceived through Twitter. And I feel like when you see a short tweet that you also enjoy, the tweet is often ingenious in a particular way where it's actually delivering a ton of information in a very short frame. I think that it's easier to write a longer tweet that's successful than a shorter tweet that's successful. And I tend to write longer tweets on this program because the shorter tweets often are a strike of inspiration. It's hard to build out those very ingenious short tweets in this format. So for me, I'm basically showing you the longer versions of tweets that might have been shorter if I had let them kind of live in the back of my head until one day I was walking through the woods and suddenly had the idea for the tweet that was sort of perfect in conception. But anyways, I think this is almost done. This feels a little bit unpunchy. Whose main character is a we want to say rabbit, but in a funny way. Oh, so we could say a lagomorph. Lagomorphs. Let's see. Because what I'm really trying to do, oh, you're welcome. What I'm really trying to do is to compare the idea that all of these bosses, all these holiday bosses, are basically about life, right? Like Thanksgiving is death, Christmas is immortality, Easter is about fecundity. It all breaks down to sort of different nature, cycles of nature, and so that's kind of what I'm playing with. So we're going to keep going. And one thing you'll know is, or one thing I think I've said on this show before, which I'm always happy to say during every show, is I don't know which jokes will hit with people. I don't know which jokes we will be deemed by their audiences to be successful and funny. I do know that I tend to have a hitting average of somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2. So I feel generally like between 1/3 of my tweets and 1/2 of my tweets are received positively. And obviously, I'm posting on the official 2MB Studios Twitter, which has about 700 followers. So for me, the bar for success on a tweet posted in this forum in this context is going to be lower than if I post on my main. That is my personal account, because my personal account has over 11,000 followers. So if I got 40 likes on any of the tweets I'm posting right now, I would be thrilled. If I got 40 likes on a tweet I post on my main, I'd be like, that's another day. And it doesn't have to do necessarily with the quality of the tweet. It's just about the venue and how many people get to see it at once. And obviously, the more people who see it, the more likely someone who sees it is to retweet it. At which point, it starts to branch out. And even a tweet that's fine, if it's seen by enough people and liked by enough people, can do pretty well. I think you can say that one way to write a successful tweet is simply to write it on a big account. Cool. Let's do some more Thanksgiving tweets. Another one. What else is about? What is something else about Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving is a family holiday. Thanksgiving is a holiday. To celebrate and be grateful for one's family. That is why I always try to time my births. When I'm pregnant, I always try to time my births around the fourth Thursday. Is Thanksgiving the fourth Thursday? It's really great the way the internet means that you never have to know anything in particular. You only have to strongly suspect it. Thanksgiving is a holiday to celebrate and be grateful for one's family. That's why when I'm pregnant, I always try to time my birth around the fourth Thursday of November. And you could add a tag, like sometimes I give birth to turkeys. But I don't know if there's a tag in here that wouldn't be absolutely bizarre. Thanksgiving is a holiday to celebrate and be grateful for one's family. That's why when I'm pregnant, I always try to time my births for around the fourth Thursday of November. When my legs are in stirrups, I think about about how grateful I am for all the large meals to come. This is a very strange joke. The ending got very, not even dark, just very absurdist and just strange. I don't want to overuse the word strange or for it to come to mean various things, which is always a drawback of using a word constantly. But strange, I think, in this case, probably does the job in terms of describing this particular tweet. Thanksgiving is a holiday to celebrate and be grateful for one's family. That's why when I'm pregnant, I always try to time my birth for around the fourth Thursday in November, with my legs in stirrups. I think about how grateful I am for all the large meals to come. Very strange. Cool. Let's keep going. Another Thanksgiving tweet. Let's see. And if you have any ideas or thoughts in the chat, I am watching the chat. It is on my phone. I am keeping track of you all. So feel free to throw out any words or ideas that you may have. Thanksgiving tweet. Things I like about Thanksgiving, or people always talk about Thanksgiving is like one of those holidays where you're supposed to eat things like mashed potatoes, gravy, and gravy comes in a gravy boat. It's funny. I don't know if other kinds of thank you, stuffing, or dressing, depending on where it is in relation to the turkey. Gravy boats are kind of a fun thing. A striking addition. Good gravy. Oh, already I'm jealous of this copywriter. A striking addition to your Thanksgiving tablescape. Oh, I love this copy. This pewter gravy boat will look perfectly at home, nestled in between a steaming bowl of mashed potatoes and your flawlessly golden turkey. If it's only mostly golden, all the more reason to cover it in gravy. I love how it's like so pretentious, and then we loves its bold swooping lines. Like it's suddenly like hard turn into Smeagolville. We loves its bold swooping lines, and it's I can't do a Smeagol, but you get it. It's generous spout, generous spout. Ooh, it holds and effortlessly pours 8 ounces of your grandma's secret recipe. So there's nothing better than like pretentious copy with like a weird grammatical error in it. So I'm already fucking delighted by that. Once I saw gravy in a it's a $200 gravy boat also. $200 gravy boat. And the visceral reaction one gets when I think what would be a good comparison? No, this is a side thing. I don't need to explain that. Once I saw gravy in a $200 gravy boat, and I had the visceral reaction one gets when a YouTube star is wearing a mink coat. I'm wearing it's like a beautiful coat. Hold it. Reaction. Like I saw a YouTube star on the cusp of breaking a priceless vase by throwing it down a skateboard ramp. I don't care how good the gravy is. I want to lie that boat is made a kind man to lion. You may notice that I think I'm still considering this the first half of my show. Sometimes creating a perfect joke requires running through some bits which in retrospect were a little bit ungainly or a little bit wild. So I feel like a lot of writing is just writing to the point where your brain sort of quiets down a little bit and you have to stop sort of striking the whip on the beast. These are still, even as I'm writing these, I'm like, these are still a little bit on the weird side. So I'm going to try to maybe, I don't know if I should like rein it in or just keep writing. Maybe I should just try to keep writing a bunch at once or in quick succession, and then maybe I'm worrying about it a little bit too much. I think the thing that is underappreciated about the joy of post painting, which the joy of posting is obviously a loving homage to, is how patient and worried he was about his painting, whereas anyone who does arts in any capacity knows that making art is often a trapdoor of various pitfalls to one's ego. And once I saw Gravy on a $200 boat, and I had a visceral reaction, like I had seen a YouTube star on the cusp of breaking a priceless face by throwing it down a skateboard ramp. I don't care how good the gravy is. That boat was made for more was made for more important tasks, like the last once I saw Gravy in a $200 gravy boat, and I had a visceral reaction, like I'd seen a YouTube star breaking a priceless vase by throwing it down a skateboard ramp. I don't care how good the gravy is. That boat was made for more important tasks. Alas, clean water on Earth boat. Once I saw Gravy, the $200 gravy boat, I had a visceral reaction, like I seen a YouTuber breaking a priceless vase by throwing it down a skateboard ramp. No matter how good the gravy is, that boat was made for more important tasks. Alas, clean water on Earth boat. Maybe. That feels pretty good. That feels reasonable. Let's do it again. Sometimes I like pretending I'm a troll, like, where's the good jokes? Obviously, I assume that's unwatchable. Let's see what else. Giving stuffing was already mentioned. Probably need to get a stuffing joke in there. Stuffing is the color of. Let's just look at stuffing. Stuffing is like one of those things where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could find a joke just a joke can emerge just from like looking at it. So it's like bread. Is it like literally just bread? I don't know why. I guess you can tell I don't eat a lot of stuffing. I really thought it was more complicated. I guess this one has oysters in it. That doesn't seem typical. Bacon. So it's kind of like a bready thing. My greatest hope is that wet seasoned croutons essentially yuck. When you put it like that, it sounds terrible. My greatest hope is that the moon is never thrown out of orbit, eventually causing Passover and Thanksgiving to align on the calendar. I will never be spiritually ready for what unleavened. This might be a little bit too niche. I really like writing jokes that I really like writing jokes that like rely on Judaism and like make Judaistic references because I'm a Jew. But this might be a very niche joke by its nature. I just got an email from Bank of America. My statement is available. That's pretty fun. Serp says, it sounds terrible, but I'd eat it and only it until I get scurvy. Like, perhaps that is God's final test for me. Yeah, sometimes I'm like writing this and I'm like, this is way too long. No way. Twitter really does save your ass in the sense that it tells you when your jokes are too long. Like, there's very rarely a joke that you're trying to write that couldn't be shortened down to the length of a tweet. My greatest hope is that the moon is never thrown out of orbit, causing Passover and Thanksgiving to align on the calendar. I'll never be spiritually ready for what unleavened stuffing tastes like. Now that I say it, perhaps God's final test for me. Would be a pretty good. My greatest hope is that the moon is never thrown out of orbit, causing Passover, and Thanksgiving to align. I'll never be spiritually ready for what unleavened stuffing tastes like. Now that I say it, perhaps that is God's final test for me. It would be a pretty good test. JGR says, you've eaten matzah brie? I don't know what BREI means, so perhaps I haven't. Matzah is like one of those things where you're like, this tastes. I think one reason it's a tradition that stuck with us is because when you eat matzah, it literally tastes like it was in Egypt of the time of when we were slaves there. Like, you're like, I really taste the ancient, the antiquity in this fucking food. Everything else is you can tell is made today. Other things about Thanksgiving. Don't like to eat too much. So, in order to celebrate Thanksgiving, I like to wear a giant buckle on my head and have insanely rigid religious beliefs while in the woods. Insanely rigid religious beliefs to someone from my neighborhood while we're in the woods. It's one of those things where you're just like, just knock it out. I am a big fan of writing a joke and then knocking it out. Obviously, there is an amount of crafting that does have to take place for certain jokes to be successful, and I think there's absolutely no shame in just being like, you know what, the next 5 jokes they're gonna be one and done. I'm just gonna type it out, and then whatever ends up coming out, I'm just gonna post it. Basically, hey Thinkertron, you're not late, you're just on time, because we've just hit a groove. My show starts at 9, but it really starts at 9:41. So you're in a great place. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. One thing about Twitter and tweeting that I particularly perceive about myself is that I'm often sort of beset by anxiety, like performance anxiety. I'm like, I have to be funny, I have to be good. And Twitter is a great playground to just write dumb things, and I think it really helps kind of cut into if you are an anxious person like I am one. It really cuts into those tendencies a lot. And thank you, John. That's very nice. I think that, and also learning that successful tweet writing require strategies to sort of undermine your perfectionist or anxious tendencies at most of the turns. So for me, it's a good place to be, even though in many ways it's a terrible place to be in general. More Thanksgiving jokes. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. I was like, I want to take off this sweater because I'm a little hot. And then I took it off and I'm like, oh no, it's quite cold. So it's a little bit too thick of a sweater, but it's better than the alternative, which is no sweater at all. Did you do one about Canadian versus American Thanksgiving? I'm going to be honest with you, Thinkertron. I do not know anything about Canadian Thanksgiving, so I could not begin to write the premise of such a joke. I haven't gotten to that episode of Trailer Park Boys yet. Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving. Thanksgiving is when one type of joke I really like writing is when I basically it's almost like a pattern game. If you're an improviser, you're familiar with the term pattern game, where I basically just start like 3 or 4 sentences with the same subject or the same few words, and then you kind of like let it spiral into absurdity. So I think I'm going to do one of those right now. Thanksgiving is when you give thanks to those around you. Friendsgiving is when you give your friends away to strangers and acquaintances. Your friends give your friends away to strangers and acquaintances. And then there should be like a third giving. Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving, and then maybe I should just make one up. Danksgiving, Dubsgiving is when you give sick beats away to the internet. You're like, oh, sometimes the process is quite ugly and awkward, isn't it? Thanksgiving is when you give thanks to those around you. Friendsgiving is when you give your friends away to strangers and acquaintances. Dubsgiving is when you give sick beats away to those who need it. Those who need them. Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving, Spanksgiving. You want to give a spank? Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving, Dubsgiving, and Upsgiving. I think I got it. Thanksgiving is when you give away your DVDs of Friends. This is almost entirely, definitely too long, but we'll see. This is one of those tweets where you can feel it getting very long. Oh, I didn't actually have enough room to make this longer. I do love this idea that somebody believes that the TV show Friends is actually spelled that way. Thanksgiving is when you give thanks to those around you. Friendsgiving is when you give your friends away to strangers. I think it's actually funnier if it's shorter. Dubsgiving is when you give sick beats away to those who need them. Friendsgiving is when you give away your DVDs of Friends. Give your friends your DVDs of Friends. I love the world where everyone wrote the TV show Friends with the asterisks in them. This is very strange. It's like, it's a very Sliders universe, like the idea that we live in a multiverse and there's a billion different universes, and in one of them everything is exactly the same except everyone writes the TV show Friends with little asterisks in them. That strikes me as very funny. Cool, let's do some more. Thanksgiving is about being grateful for what you have. I'm thankful. I'm grateful. My guillotine is so sharp, you guys. It would be like the catty way of writing that one. But I do think that guillotine humor is a little bit hack, unfortunately, also literally. So I do try to avoid it, even though I basically may or may not agree with its essential premise. Gonna think about it. What am I grateful for? You're like, wait, besides, like, joking aside, like, what am I actually grateful for? Thanksgiving is about being grateful for what you have. I do want to do more turkey jokes, just because I think turkeys are ridiculous, and I feel like we haven't really hit, besides referring to them correctly as a corpse. I think it's so weird when people like either like anthropomorphize the turkey corpse or sexualize the turkey corpse, both of which you see very often. But I feel like the turkey as an animal itself is very bizarre. Roast that key. We're gonna make some turkey jokes. We're gonna roast that turkey because turkeys are dumb. Living in Cambridge, you generally see at least 3 belligerent turkeys blocking the roads most days. So on Thanksgiving, we give thanks that made us patient and not inclined to make them damage our cars with an attempted pancaking. So living in Cambridge, Mass, you see at least 3 belligerent turkeys blocking the road most days. On Thanksgiving, we give thanks to the fact, gives thanks to God for giving us the patience to avoid damaging our cars with an attempt at making turkey pancakes. No matter how righteous breakfast that would be. They really are quite a menace. Living in Cambridge, Mass, you see 3 belligerent turkeys blocking the roads most days. On Thanksgiving, we give thanks to God for giving us the patience to avoid damaging our cars with an attempt at making turkey pancakes, no matter how righteous a breakfast that would be. That feels right. That feels good. That feels correct. Again, thank you so much for joining us. You're like, watch me write this very, not even passive aggressive, just quite hostile joke toward an animal who can't defend itself, at least specifically intellectually. Let's write some more turkeys are dumb idiots jokes. These always make me laugh. Turkeys have like these giant bodies, these tiny heads, and they're so mad. Let's see. Turkeys look like hands. Why I know turkeys are idiots. Turkeys look like hands. They really did choose the most unattractive part of the human body to emulate. even feet-shaped birds would have had their generous share of admirers. Those fools. Those feathered fools. Those feathered fools. Usually, I don't always laugh when I'm writing my jokes, so any joke that makes me laugh, I'm like, it's probably more or less a keeper. Why I know turkeys are idiots. Turkeys look like hands. They really did choose the most unattractive part of the human body to emulate. Even feet-shaped birds would have had their generous share of admirers. Those feathered fools. That feels good. That feels good to me. Let's see what else. Also, I hope you guys can see the jokes. Yeah, I think this is written big enough. If you are enjoying the stream, or if you merely are curious about what else this channel does, feel free to check in tomorrow at 8, I believe, either 7:30 or 8. It's a Thanksgiving special called Slamsgiving. We have a show called Quarantine Action Wrestling, which intersperses comedic sketches where Boston's greatest comedians pretend to be wrestling fierce wrestlers, and then that's interspersed with footage of a video game where their personas have been created to fight each other within a particular video game that the computer manifests, and it's quite a good time. They're probably members of the fighters for tomorrow night in the chat right now, and they are quite strong and brave, each and every one. This is a very like classic Twitter sad moment when you're like, I want to check my notifications. There are so many. What a terrible problem now. But I have to keep doing my show. The governor of New Jersey will be a dominant force tomorrow. If you have never seen Quarantine Action Wrestling, our friend Red the Ready plays the governor of New Jersey. He is a dragon owner, and he is the cause of the huge increase in grist mills in the New Jersey area within the lore of the show. And he is also a formidable fighter, as well as a functioning commissioner of Quarantine Action Wrestling. If you have not gotten the feeling that there might be a lot of lore in the show, believe me, if you are a fan of lore, this is the show that should be your go-to on the channel. Very little lore on this show in comparison to Quarantine Action Wrestling. I would say that of Quarantine Action Wrestling, I've watched like about half of it. Like I think I came into it halfway, so there'll always be certain storylines which I'll be a little bit lost about. Like not to get too into it. I'm like gonna get into it. There's a wrestling group called, I think, The Generation, which people always refer to as if it's this classic wrestling community or group of wrestlers. But I've never seen The Generation ever perform. Or AC Volts. I've never actually seen AC Volts win, even though they always talk about her as if she has won a lot of matches, because I just hadn't started watching while she was winning. But yeah, there's a lot of lore. It's really funny. They put a ton of work into it. So definitely check that out tomorrow, either at 7:30 or 8. Follow us, you'll get the notification. Everyone, seriously though, follow and subscribe. It's so we work so hard in the channel, and we're like, God, we really need to figure out how money works to make money on this channel, because we work so hard at it. And especially for me, I'm like, I need to figure out how to make money on this channel before my unemployment runs out. No pressure. Let's write a couple more jokes before we close out tonight. Thanksgiving. What else about Thanksgiving is true? Macy's Day Parade. The Macy's Day Parade. Which is funny. I don't even know if Macy's is still a thing. I feel like everything's gone out of business. Is Macy's still in business. It's a quick Google away. Macy's is closing roughly 125 stores, a fifth of its locations over the next 3 years. After announcing that it would close 29 locations, Macy's said Tuesday that it will now shutter nearly 100 more. So it sounds like they're on the way out. But they still have this parade. It's also weird that they have a parade that a clothing store has a parade. It's like how like Michelin Tires reviews restaurants. When you remember that clothing is as far from giant floating cartoon characters. I'm kind of like dreading it because I can hear my dad like coming onto the first floor, and I'm like, is he gonna forget that I have a show right now? Very clear about when my shows are. Macy's Day. Dad? Yeah? I'm still doing my show. Okay. He's gonna make a lot of noise in the other room and say he's not bothering me, but he is. A Macy's Day Parade makes sense when you remember the clothing is as far from giant floating cartoon characters as Michelin tires are from restaurant reviews. Everybody is allowed this world. Everybody's allowed to do one thing and one thing that other thing very far from the first thing. Macy's Day Parade makes sense when you remember that clothing is as far from giant floating cartoon characters as Michelin tires are from restaurant reviews. In this world, everybody's allowed to do their one thing and another thing very far from that thing. It's what gives the world its lattice-like structure. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think I feel perfectly satisfied with that as a conclusion to that particular joke. Of course, it is too long. The Macy's Day Parade makes sense when you remember that clothing is far from balloon floats, parade floats. Michelin tires are from restaurant reviews. This world, everybody is allowed to do their thing, another thing, another very different thing. It's what gives society its lattice-like structure. There we go. That feels good. Let's see, we'll just do a couple more to close out the night. Again, if you are enjoying yourself, we have shows on 2MB Studios. 7 days a week. We have, I believe, 25 shows up this moment, several more in process, sort of in the works. Like everything but the premiere date, basically. We are trying to make shows which delight and amuse our audience that are also community building. I know it's very hard to build a community when we're all just pixels. I myself am very aware that you are all engaging me as a series of pixels, saying sometimes funny and sometimes more often strange things. But to the extent that I'm a real person and you're a real person, we can try to make this community together. Cool, let's do a couple more. I just feel like I could do a couple more before the night gives out. before it heaves its final wearied, effortful gasp. Let's see, what else have I not talked about? I made a few turkey jokes. Like, do I need to give turkeys a little bit more what for? Thanksgiving, a time to remember what we're grateful for. In this time of overwhelmed hospitals, I'm glad for the fact that nothing stays the same. Thank you. Entropy. What would we do without you? They really are smug. Like, different birds have just, even though you would think that there needs to be an intellectual capacity to harness smugness, certain birds just have it. Thanksgiving is a time to remember what we're grateful for in this time of overwhelmed hospitals. Some information and global unrest. I'm glad for the fact that nothing stays the same. Thank you, entropy. Thank you, entropy, and the universe's eventual heat death. What would we do without you? And actually, do I want to do one more? I think I could do one more. Usually that would feel like a good cap. You're like, that one feels like the last joke. But I feel like I have one or two more. Usually I like to end the show when I'm like out. You're like, if I'm doing a good job by my own standards, if I feel like I'm relatively entertaining and I'm writing the words in the right order, why don't I keep going? There could be like a really good joke just under my fingernails, just waiting to sort of squirm its way out. So let's just do one or two more. Getting 2 days off. Days off for Thanksgiving. Makes sense when you remember that Turkey Jesus takes one fewer day to, what's it called when Jesus resurrects? The resurrection? I think it's probably just called the resurrection. Getting 2 days off for Thanksgiving makes sense when you remember that Turkey Jesus only takes 2 days to return. Compared to the human version, it takes 2 days to return. Kind of fun. I think the idea of a turkey Jesus is like he goes through Jesus's whole narrative, but it's just like slightly different because he's a turkey. You're like, when you think about turkey Jesus, you're like, oh, he was born in a manger. That basically makes sense. He is an animal. What else? Cranberry sauce. Explaining to my relatives why I'm softly singing, Dreams by, what's that word? What's that band? Fleetwood Mac. I don't need to Google Fleetwood Mac. My brain isn't completely toast. Explaining to my relatives why I'm softly singing Dreams by Fleetwood Mac while playing with my cranberry sauce. Unlike the famous famous man on the highway, I receive no adulation. I receive no approval. I am asked to finish my meal in my room. Explain to my relatives why it's so clever that I'm softly singing Dreams by Fleetwood Mac while playing with my cranberry sauce. Obviously, it's a reference to the man who was on the highway. I think it was on some sort of electric scooter. He was like taking a viral video to Dreams by Fleetwood Mac while drinking the cranberry juice. And they gave him like a free truck, and then Fleetwood Mac went back on the charts. Fleetwood Mac is one of those few bands that I think is able to basically jump back on the charts every few years because every time high schoolers hear them, they're like, fuck, this is pretty good. Was he riding down a hill on a skateboard? Oh, wow, on a highway. That's wild. He deserves a new truck. Thank you, cranberry juice people. I would never be able to do such a thing. Yeah, if you haven't followed and subscribed yet, please do. We have some really cool merch. That merch is short for merchandise. Like I am so bad at articulating my words sometimes that I'm hoping that comes out clear and reasonable sounding. It's merchandise. Matt will throw, I'm sure, a link to the merch that we have currently available in the chat. If you could do that, Matt. He's been working really hard to get some merch up there. We are working really hard to get our cool logos and artwork from our shows onto clothing and other accessories, which we feel are Matt's been working really hard on the merch. I cannot speak highly enough of Matt and his work, both in terms of quality and persistence. Let's write one more. Thanksgiving. 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 Cranberry sauce stuffing. Oh, did I ever do a stuffing joke? Let me see. I wrote a lot of jokes tonight. I don't know if I wrote any. I wrote a Passover joke. Quality, persistent, Matt. Yeah, and it's really great to work with people like Matt and Ben who like stick on a thing because I'm like so like a little bit flaky. I'm like, this isn't fun anymore. This isn't immediately gratifying anymore. Just flit off like a fairy with an E in it. Watching No Country for Old Men. Tired. Die Hard. Was it a Christmas movie? Wired. Country for Men. It was a Thanksgiving movie. It's about grateful you're alive briefly in a cold, hard world. Happy holidays. I'm not taking the lack of a stuffing joke personally. I'm very grateful. That's what I'm going to give thanks to. 2MB says, I would kill to have Sam Elliott say my name in a phrase. Guys, is Sam Elliott on Cameo? Someone should check. Cool. So I think this will be the last one for now. I like his love. That's super dark. I like always to like end on a dark note because that's generally feels ultimately like the truest thing. I don't like to end on a lie. So, guys, that's been my show. I've been Rachel Edelman. You've been watching me write jokes for roughly 73 minutes, minus the time I vamped at the top. Thanks so much for watching. Feel free to follow, subscribe, watch other shows, buy our merch, take a class at 3weeks.courses, which we are a partner of. They are offering a bunch of new courses this December in various topics from finance, literacy, to feminist icon literature, to other things. So I was doing so well at the top, you guys. But check them out. Take a class, connect with people, learn a new skill. We're all tied up for the winter, so you might as well learn how to do something cool. And otherwise, have a great rest of your night and have a great Thanksgiving. Stay safe, and keep other people safe by staying away from people unless you absolutely need to be near them or you've been near them already for several months. Have a great night and good night.